So if you've been a part of this community for the past several years with me as the minister, you know that I use the month of December to explore the alignment of our philosophy with the teachings of other religions as we celebrate all the holy days this time of year. We've done Teze services, like an interfaith exploration of the light within us all. We've done a deep dive into Hanukkah. I'm going to bring that one back sometime too. We've explored the Buddhist significance of Rahutsu, or Bodhi Day. I taught an entire lesson about winter solstice one year, and today I want to circle back to this lesson I gave 4 years ago and talk about the meaning of Christmas on this Christmas Eve. And I want to start with a little bit of history. So the origin of assigning December 25th as the date of the birth of Jesus is a little bit unclear. One account says that December 25th was identified as the day of Jesus' birth by Sextus Julius Africanus in the year 221 AD. That's when he declared that. And later that kind of became the universally accepted date. And one explanation of that is the Christianizing of the ancient celebration, Dies Solis Invicti Nati, or the day of the birth of the unconquered sun. That was a very, very popular holiday in the Roman Empire that celebrated the winter solstice kind of as a symbol in the resurgence of the sun, or the light, casting away the winter and heralding the rebirth of spring and summer. And we can see some customs that are back from that birth of the unconquered sun, in that we decorate our homes with evergreen greenery and gift giving and singing songs and eating special foods. All of those kind of traditions date way, way, way back in ancient times. And then the Christmas holiday was further developed with the legend of St. Nicholas. And a lot of his history is actually unconfirmed, but the man who became St. Nicholas lived in the 4th century. So we're talking about 2nd century and now the 4th century. And he's believed to have been a bishop in Asia Minor. And many miracles that are attributed to St. Nicholas are dubious at best, but nevertheless, some countries named him as their patron saint. So it's a couple of different avenues that you can kind of get to Christmas. And all of us have a relationship with Christmas, whether we're raised in a Christian home or not. We're surrounded by symbols of Christmas and the Christian observance of Christmas. And maybe you're like me and we only kind of look at some of the secular symbols a little bit in stories in our effort to kind of distance ourselves from the religiosity of the holiday. That's kind of my path. But one of the questions I get asked all the time is, do we celebrate Christmas in this philosophy? Or what does the science of mind teach about Jesus and the story of his birth? So that's what I want to talk about today. So just think for a second, why do we spend so much time talking about this? Why would I spend a lesson in this? Think for a second about everything that has been created because of this one story, this simple story, out of a story of an unwed mother giving birth to a child who would go on to become the greatest spiritual teacher of all time. Out of this story came so very, very much. First of all, an entire worldwide religion was birthed from this story. And beyond that, entire nations and empires and cities and communities and orphanages and schools and colleges were created because of this story. Human beings have been coming together in a variety of structures, big and small, around this story. And beyond that, think of everything else that has been created from the telling and retelling, the writing and rewriting of this story. Think of the books that have been written over these past 2,000 years, but also poetry and essays and just simple thoughts and blog posts and all kinds of things are written about this story. Think of the millions of pieces of art that depict this story or characters from this story. Paintings and murals and sculptures and statues and jewelry and so much more art. And let's not forget the music. The music this story has inspired. Operas and hymns and symphonies from long ago all the way to let's see, Jimmy Fallon and Meghan Trainor wrapping up for Christmas. I mean, we go all the way back and then we go to yesterday, right? Music and versions of songs about Christmas. For 2,000 years, people have been living in relationship to this one story. Why? Why? Why this story? Why not Hansel and Gretel? Why not Goldilocks? And why not those other stories? Why this story? Why is this unlikely story so powerful and universal? I think it's because of all the mythical and mystical interpretations that one can explore as you consider this story. You can look at this story from so many different angles, almost endlessly, right? As metaphysicians, we're trying to look at the meta meanings behind all of the religious stories. And I encourage you to embrace this one story in particular as your very own, to love and appreciate and interpret for yourself. Take each character, each element of the story, and see what it has to teach you about yourself, about your life, or your relationship, or your struggles, or your understanding of the divine. Look at them. Looking beyond the possibility of it being a factual account of a historical event. If we can get beyond that, there's a lot to glean from it. And I know so many of us have walked away from Christianity for reasons that are as varied as the experiences that we all had with it. But why would anyone walk completely away from the greatest story ever told when it has so many messages for us? Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, published in the Science of Mind magazine in 1961 an article called The Rediscovery of Christmas. And I want to share just some of what he writes and also ask you to take a fresh look at this most ancient story from this metaphysical perspective. And again, I ask you to see yourself in each element. And this is what Holmes wrote at the beginning of his article. He said, and there's nothing on the screen. At this time of the year, we are celebrating the greatest event of history, the birth of Jesus, whose destiny it was to proclaim the good news that the kingdom of God is at hand. And he demonstrated this. So the birth of Jesus is symbolic of the birth of the God-man in the human soul, the incarnation of the living spirit in you and me. Jesus was the embodiment of the divine love, that Christ consciousness, and he showed the way and the truth and the life and revealed that the heart of the eternal is most beautifully kind. So this time of year, we think of the birth of this most divine person and rededicate our hearts to the service of humanity, just as he did, just as he is the great example. The story of his birth contains so many meanings and symbols to all of us. End quote. Ernest Holmes. So as a minister, I know that I am going to be exploring this Christmas story for the rest of my life, looking for those meanings and those symbols, and this year is no exception. So I want to start first with the setting of the story, the manger. What does the manger represent? Where is your manger? Holmes wrote this about the manger. He said, the manger means the simple things of life, the commonplace, the everyday things. As we think back to the time when Jesus was born in a manger, we must remember that this greatest spiritual lesson ever taught is trying to tell us about ourselves, showing that our background is of no importance. All that matters is what we do with it. End quote. What he's saying is that no matter how you start out, no matter where you start out, the birth of the Christ consciousness is born into each one, and what we do with that is what matters. Spirit can and does show up everywhere, not just the high temples and the cathedrals, but also the lowly mangers. Not just at the Ritz, but also the Motel 6, so to speak, right? So that's the setting, the commonplace, the everyday. And this year, what sparked my interest about the story were the understanding that the qualities of God that we talk about so much around here in the science of mind, in our day-to-day conversations, they're depicted so clearly in this story. The nature of God shows up and is revealed in many of the elements. And I want to share a few of these with you this morning and invite you to personalize this to your own life. Remember the qualities, if you were here last week, remember the qualities that I wanted you to sing about? Peace, love, joy, harmony, connection, all of those. They're all in the story. Let's look at love first. Love is a quality of God. It's a way to describe God. Love is all over this story. To be super obvious, it's the human relationships in the scene, right? Joseph loved Mary, even though she was carrying a child with uncertain paternity. Joseph demonstrated his love for her as he searched for a place that she could give birth. It was an actual, active love, a protective love. The question is, how are you a Joseph in your life? Mary loved Jesus, naturally as a mother, but even bigger, everyone loved Jesus. When you think of the love languages that we talk about that are most familiar with, the 5 of them, think about how they show up in the examples of this story. Affirming words, quality time together, touch, acts of service, and gifts. Those are the 5 love languages. They're all there. They're all there. And speaking of gifts, gifts of every kind were brought to this baby. They were brought by a wide variety of people, from wise men to shepherds to little drummer boys, if you believe the song. The quality of God, of love, is apparent in the story and the retelling of the story too. How is love showing up in your story every day and today? The story also illustrates that it doesn't matter if you are a lowly shepherd tending to a flock of sheep. Sheep are the innocence of life. If you search within yourself, you will be led to a source of all love. And what is the flock that you are tending? Holmes said that our flock is our thoughts, our words, our choices. Those are our flocks. And if we tend to them, we will be led to love, the source of love, the foundation of Christ consciousness. Mind your flock, discover love. Peace is obviously in the story as well, in all our Christmas story and the songs, for example. The child was born to bring peace to a tribal society that still to this day cannot hold peace. He was called the Prince of Peace. And peace was symbolized by the animals in the manger too. The entire scene is described as peaceful. One truth of God is peace, and this story is a depiction of the peace that is possible in the world, even the world of the Middle East. And I know that people all over the world this year are praying for the peace of God to descend upon the people living there this morning. So the question is your current manger peaceful? There's a Christmas lesson in that for sure. Wisdom is a quality of God. So important in this story. And there were 3 characters. It's so important. There's 3 of them to represent wisdom. The wise men. Holmes wrote this. In the generations before the birth of Jesus, the world had looked forward to the coming of a Messiah. It is written that the wise men of the East had heard this, and led by a star, were guided to the manger where the little child lay. In the legend of the Orient, the wise men represent those who have come to understand that there is one supreme power and intelligence in the universe. That's the wisdom we all seek, right? And if we allow our wisest self to follow the star, the light within us, we too can come to that understanding there's one supreme power and intelligence in the universe. Another God quality is harmony. Every element in the story works together to create this rich and full experience of the nativity scene. As each character arrives on the scene, a new sense of order is created as they harmoniously bless this child. So the question is, are you a harmonious element in your life? When you enter a scene, do you arrive as harmony and bless others? That's a question. Angels are in the story, singing harmony and absolute joy. They're singing the word hallelujah, which in Hebrew means joyous song of God. And that leads to joy, another quality of God. The birth of this child was a joyous occasion to be celebrated by thousands for years to come. We sing joy to the world and we celebrate joy this time of year. And let's not forget abundance. Prosperity of all kinds found its way to this little family. The innkeeper made space when there wasn't even any room. The wise men brought gold and frankincense and myrrh, whatever myrrh is. And it's all these symbols of abundance at that time. Myrrh. And what about light? The light of God is represented in the star that shined and showed the way to the Christ child. And we are all the Christ child. If you follow the light of God, you will find your own inner light. Holmes wrote, and then the angels of light appeared among them, and glory shone around. That heavenly voice that came to the shepherds is something that should be more real to all of us. Perhaps the angels or ideas of God's presence are ever around us, waiting with their message of hope and cheer to enter our minds, to still our fears, and to sing for us the glorious tidings of good cheer. Each one of us has the light of God within us. We didn't have to earn it. It was born into us, just as it was born into Jesus and every other person. As each one of us is the Christ child, we are blessed with the light of God, but also every other quality that I just talked about. Love is our birthright. Peace and wisdom and harmony and joy and abundance and light are ours just because we exist. We are blessed with the qualities of God simply because we were born in a manger or a hospital or wherever we were born, right? We are celebrating this month not just the birth of the greatest spiritual example who ever graced the world with his presence, but also the birth of each one of us as a human being, allowing Spirit to express through us that love, that peace, that wisdom, that joy, that light. For this truly is the meaning of the Christmas story. Let us each follow the star of our own spiritual wisdom, our own spiritual intuition, which leads us from wherever we began to the knowing that you have this divine spark within us. And here are the last words of Dr. Holmes in his rediscovery of Christmas. He wrote, "Let us follow the star of light, knowing that no harm can come to us on ocean or on shore. May that faith which sustained the man Jesus be our faith. May that love which was the motivating power of his life flow through us, and as the final triumph of the Spirit ends in a burst of eternal glory in his experience, so may the light of heaven come to all of us, that there shall be peace on our earth, and from us goodwill to all humankind." So this Christmas, let us think of this as we make our gifts to each other, that behind the gift is the giver, and behind the giver is God. End quote. Discovering the Christ consciousness within you, the divine identity that you are a human being having a universal spiritual experience. That is your salvation, not from an eternity of suffering, but from your own ideas of separateness and unworthiness that makes one's life hell right here. Every time you see a nativity scene this week or for the rest of your life, each holiday season, let it remind you of your own calling to the birth of the light of Christ within you. I personally invite you to greater peace, greater joy, greater light, greater love this week, this year, this lifetime. It is the most wonderful time there is. Merry Metaphysical Christmas. And so it is.